The sterile brightness of the hospital room felt almost cruel. Machines hummed softly, the faint scent of disinfectant clinging to the air as Lila lay weak against the white sheets. Her skin was pale, her hand trembling as it rested protectively over her swollen belly. Just hours ago, she had collapsed on the marble floor of their mansion, clutching her stomach, gasping for help that came too late. Adrian Cross stood near the foot of her bed, expensive watch glinting under the fluorescent light. His expression carried no concern, only irritation. "You should have stayed home instead of pretending to be important," he muttered, not looking up from his phone. Lila's voice broke, fragile as glass. "Will you stay for me and the baby?" Adrian let out a sharp laugh. "I'll stay for my real future. Sophia's family is worth billions. You're nothing but a burden." He turned, adjusting his cufflinks before walking out, leaving behind only the echo of his cruelty. Lila stared at the closed door, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She placed a trembling hand over her stomach and whispered, voice full of quiet resolve, "Don't cry, little one. We'll never need him. We have something far greater." 3 years earlier, Lila Monroe was a name whispered with admiration in business circles, a poised heiress with a sharp mind and a heart inclined toward humility. As the only daughter of Charles Monroe, founder of Monroe Global Enterprises, she had been raised not to flaunt her wealth but to understand its purpose. She preferred simplicity, coffee over champagne, public transport over private jets. It was at a glittering charity gala that she met Adrian Cross, the man who would one day shatter her heart. He approached her with a perfect blend of charm and ambition, speaking of dreams, growth, and partnership. To Lila, he seemed genuine, passionate, a man striving to make something of himself. She never mentioned her inheritance, never let slip her connection to Monroe Global. Instead, she let him believe she was a modest architect working her way up the ladder. Adrian admired her humility, or so she thought. In truth, he saw it as weakness, a quality he could exploit. When he proposed, it wasn't out of love but conquest. And as she said yes, her eyes filled with innocent hope, unaware that the man before her coveted power far more than her heart. The first few months of marriage were a blur of charm and promises. But soon the warmth faded, replaced by Adrian's cold, calculated dominance. He began subtly, suggesting she quit her job, saying he wanted to take care of her. Then came the rules: which friends she could see, what clothes she should wear, and how she should speak at dinners. He monitored her spending, cutting off access to joint accounts under the guise of managing finances better. When she tried to reconnect with old colleagues, he'd smirk. "A millionaire's wife doesn't need to work." His words stung more than she admitted. When Lila became pregnant, she expected tenderness. Instead, Adrian became distant, irritated by her fatigue and the growing child she carried. "You've let yourself go," he'd scoff while preparing for business trips with Sophia, a woman whose designer heels and fake smiles filled the tabloids. Each time he returned, he was colder, more dismissive. Lila stopped recognizing the man she married. The home that once felt like a dream had turned into a gilded cage, its walls lined with silence and deceit. She lay awake at night, staring into the dark, realizing the bitter truth. She hadn't married a husband. She'd married her captor. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and laughter, a sea of glittering gowns and tailored suits. Lila arrived quietly, radiant in a pale blue dress that hugged her 8-month belly. The event was hosted by an old family friend, someone who still remembered her as the confident Monroe heiress. But that night, she came only as Mrs. Adrian Cross, the name that now felt like a curse. Moments later, the room fell into whispers as Adrian entered. His arm proudly wrapped around Sophia Vale, the glamorous socialite splashed across every magazine cover. Cameras flashed. He smiled for them all, then gestured toward Sophia. "Everyone," he announced. "Meet my true partner, the woman who understands real wealth and class." Lila froze. 1,000 eyes turned toward her. A reporter asked softly, "And Mrs. Cross?" Adrian chuckled. She's sweet, he said, voice dripping with mockery. But she doesn't belong in this world. The humiliation seared through her, but she didn't let her tears fall. She straightened her shoulders, masking the pain with grace. When the cameras turned away, she leaned toward her loyal assistant and whispered, calm but firm, "Record everything he says tonight." That night, amid flashing lights and cruel laughter, her quiet revenge was born. A week after the charity event, the mansion felt colder than ever. Rain lashed against the tall windows as Adrian stormed into the living room, a folder clutched tightly in his manicured hands. His expression was triumphant, cruel. He tossed the documents onto the marble coffee table. "I'm filing for divorce," he announced, voice sharp with satisfaction. "Sophia and I are getting married next month. You'll receive a settlement, $50,000. More than generous for someone like you." Lila looked up from her seat, her face calm, unreadable. 50,000, she repeated softly. "That's what my dignity is worth to you." Adrian smirked, buttoning his suit jacket. "You'll regret not being born rich. Women like you should be grateful when men like me take care of them." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then Lila smiled faintly, her voice steady. "I already was born rich, Adrian. You just never cared to notice." He blinked, confused, but brushed it off with a scoff. "Delusional as always," he muttered before slamming the door behind him. As his car disappeared down the driveway, Lila picked up her phone and called her lawyer. Her tone was composed, decisive. "It's time," she said. "Let's begin." The following morning, Lila entered the mahogany-paneled office of her late father's lawyer, Mr. Grayson, a man who had known her since childhood. His eyes softened when he saw her, pale, exhausted, but with a quiet strength burning beneath the surface. Without a word, he opened his safe and handed her a sealed ivory envelope embossed with a Monroe family crest. "This," he said gently, "was left by your father. He instructed me to give it to you when you were ready." With trembling fingers, Lila broke the seal. Inside lay a letter and several official documents, her father's final will. Her eyes widened as she read the words that changed everything. She was the sole owner of Monroe Global's 48% controlling shares, valued at over $800 million. Her father's handwritten note at the end read, "You will know when to use this power. Use it wisely, my daughter." For years, she had kept that secret, wanting a life built on love, not legacy. But now, betrayal had shown her the truth. With calm precision, she signed the activation documents, transferring full authority to her name. Among the holdings she now controlled was Cross Enterprises' primary investor. It was poetic justice, and it had just begun. The next morning, sunlight streamed weakly through the hospital blinds. Lila sat upright now, her calm demeanor unsettling in its strength. The door opened with a click, and Adrian strutted in, designer suit flawless, sunglasses perched arrogantly on his nose, a bouquet of roses dangling lazily from his hand. "Don't get emotional," he said flatly, setting the flowers on the side table. "You'll be fine. Sophia and I are heading to the Bahamas next week. Thought I'd stop by, just to look decent." He patted her hand condescendingly, as though humoring a child. But Lila's lips curved into a knowing smile. "You should answer your phone," she murmured. His brows furrowed. He glanced down, missed calls, notifications flooding his screen. Before he could react, the door burst open. His assistant, breathless, blurted out, "Sir, our stocks are crashing. Monroe Global just pulled every investment. Your accounts, they're frozen." Adrian's face turned ashen. The phone slipped from his hand, landing with a dull thud. Lila met his eyes, serene as a queen delivering a verdict. "You mocked your wife on her hospital bed," she said softly. "Now watch the wife you mocked own your empire." For the first time, Adrian Cross understood what true power looked like. By evening, the world knew. News tickers flashed across every screen. Monroe Global withdraws support from Cross Enterprises. Reporters swarmed the city, capturing the chaos that followed. Investors fled like birds from a burning tree, and the company Adrian once bragged about crumbled within hours. Sophia's family, once eager to flaunt their connection to him, panicked as their own assets plummeted. When Adrian called her, desperate for comfort, she answered with icy detachment. "I don't date broke men," she said before hanging up. Within days, his empire was ash. Banks repossessed his cars, auctioned his penthouses, and shut down his accounts. His so-called friends and partners disappeared, leaving him drowning in debts and regret. In a final act of desperation, Adrian drove to the Grand Monroe estate, Lila's true home. The mansion's towering gates gleamed like the walls of a kingdom he'd never been worthy to enter. Security stopped him before he could step inside. Then Lila appeared, serene and powerful, her newborn daughter nestled in her arms. "This house," she said softly, "was mine long before you ever knew me." Adrian dropped to his knees, voice trembling. But she simply turned away, whispering, "Some lessons are paid in silence." Months passed, and the wounds that once consumed Lila slowly transformed into strength. She poured her pain into purpose, launching the Hope Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to helping pregnant women abandoned, abused, or silenced by their partners. What began as a small initiative quickly grew into a global movement. Her story spread across media outlets. Headlines celebrated her rise from mocked wife to empowered heiress. In interviews, when journalists asked if she ever forgave Adrian, her response was calm and unwavering. "Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone back into your life. It means letting their power over you die." Her words resonated with millions. Her daughter, Amelia, became her light, the tiny heartbeat that had kept her strong through every storm. Each smile from her child reminded Lila that her victory wasn't just revenge. It was rebirth. With her fortune, she began investing in women-owned startups, mentoring young entrepreneurs and advocating for equality in boardrooms worldwide. The woman who once lay broken on a hospital bed now stood as a symbol of grace and defiance. Her revenge was never destruction, it was creation. She didn't burn his world down, she built her own higher. Her power, quiet yet unshakable, became her true legacy. Years slipped by, softening memories but not the lessons they carried. Adrian Cross, once the proud face of power, now worked as a mid-level consultant in a modest firm. His hair had turned gray. His confidence dulled into quiet regret. The lavish world he once flaunted had long forgotten his name. One afternoon, his manager informed him of a merger meeting at Monroe Global. Adrian straightened his old suit, unaware of the irony fate had prepared. When he entered the sleek boardroom, time seemed to stop. At the head of the table stood Lila Monroe, radiant in white, her presence commanding silence. His throat tightened. "Lila, I didn't know," he began, voice trembling. She met his gaze with calm authority. "You never cared to know," she replied. With one elegant stroke of her pen, she finalized Monroe Global's acquisition of his firm, making him once again beneath her command. Then, with a faint, almost kind smile, she said, "I hope you treat the women in your office better than you treated your wife." As she walked out, cameras flashed in the corridor. Amelia held her hand, the future gleaming beside her. And a voice echoed softly, "Never underestimate a woman's worth, especially one who knows her own."
Hello, dear listeners. Have you ever made a choice that changed everything? A decision so devastating that it echoes through the years, haunting every quiet moment. We all carry regrets. But what happens when those regrets become so heavy that they paralyze us literally? Today's story explores a question that cuts to the heart of what it means to be human. Can someone who runs from love ever truly come home? Can wounds so deep ever heal? And most importantly, can fear the kind that freezes us in our darkest moments ever be conquered? This is Coming Home, a story about a man who chose fame over family and spent 8 years paying the price. A story about a woman who loved too deeply and paid for it. A story about a little girl who just wanted her father. And ultimately, a story about finding the courage to face the ghosts that chase us. Let's begin. Liam Carter is a superstar. At 33 years old, he's sold millions of albums, performed in arenas around the world, and become one of country music's brightest stars. His voice, raw, haunting, authentic, has made him rich and famous. But every night after the crowds leave and the stage lights dim, Liam sits alone in his dressing room with a battered Nokia phone. The screen is cracked, the casing is held together with duct tape. A phone from 2015, long obsolete, yet Liam refuses to replace it because stored in that phone is a single voicemail. A message left 8 years ago by a woman named Josie McKenna, the woman he left at the altar. Liam, I'm pregnant, it's yours, I'm scared, please call me back, I love you, I'll always love you. Every night for 8 years, Liam has listened to this message. It's his ritual, his penance, his punishment. He never called her back. The story truly begins when Liam's childhood best friend Tommy dies in a car accident. Despite having a full tour schedule, despite his manager's protests, Liam makes a decision he's going home to Bozeman, Montana for the funeral. It's his first time back in 8 years. And nothing will ever be the same. To understand Liam's journey, we must go back to June 15th, 2017. Liam was 25, poor and struggling. He played guitar at a local dive bar for tips, dreaming of making it as a musician, but never quite believing it would happen. The only bright spot in his life was Josie McKenna, his high school sweetheart, his fiancée, the woman who believed in him when no one else did. Their wedding was set for June 15th. A simple ceremony in a small church, nothing fancy, just love. But the day before the wedding, a man named Rick Morrison knocked on Liam's door. Rick was a talent scout from Nashville. He'd seen a video of Liam performing and wanted to sign him to a record deal immediately. There was just one catch: Liam had to leave that day. A famous producer was only available for 48 hours, and if Liam missed the window, the deal was off. So Liam faced an impossible choice: marry the woman he loved and stay in his small town forever playing to empty bars, or chase his dream and become a star. He chose the dream. He wrote a 2-sentence note, "Josie, I'm sorry, I have to go," and walked out. Josie stood at the altar in her wedding dress, holding wildflowers, waiting for a groom who never came. The town turned on Liam. His father, David, was devastated. Josie's brother, Connor, a deputy sheriff, vowed that if Liam ever came back, he'd make him pay. But Liam didn't look back. He got on a plane to Nashville and never returned. 3 weeks later, Josie discovered she was pregnant. She called Liam, left a voicemail begging him to call back. He listened to it. But he didn't respond because he was ashamed, because he didn't know what to say, because by then he'd gone too far to turn back. So Josie raised their daughter Billy alone, and Liam became famous. Alone. 8 years later, Liam returns for Tommy's funeral. Bozeman has changed. New shops, new faces. But the mountains, the river, the sky, those are the same. And so are the people who remember what he did. At the funeral, Liam keeps his distance. He watches from his car as mourners file into the church. Then he sees her. Josie, she's thinner now, her hair is shorter, she wears a black dress and holds the hand of a little girl with brown hair and blue eyes. Liam's eyes, his breath stops. That's my daughter. Connor spots Liam's car, walks over, and delivers a warning. Stay away from Josie, stay away from the kid, or else. Liam wants to run again. But something stops him. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's the faint, desperate hope that he can fix what he broke. That night after the funeral, Liam encounters Josie at the cemetery. She's visiting Tommy's grave. They talk tense, painful, honest, and Josie tells him the truth. She's yours, Billy. She's your daughter. Liam's world collapses. I didn't know, he whispers. I told you, I left you a voicemail. I listened to it every night. I didn't know how to respond. So you didn't. The anger in Josie's voice is sharp, but underneath it, Liam hears something else: pain, the kind that hasn't healed in 8 years. He asks if he can meet Billy. Josie hesitates, then agrees. But she makes it clear one chance, that's all he gets. Meeting Billy for the first time is the most terrifying moment of Liam's life. She's 7 years old, smart, cautious, and she knows exactly who Liam is, not as her father, but as the famous singer her mom listens to. Liam tries to connect, but every attempt fails. He brings her a stuffed animal. She says she's too old for stuffed animals. He asks if she likes sports. She likes reading. He buys her a book. It's too young for her. Billy keeps him at arm's length. She calls him Mr. Carter, not Dad. Because Billy knows the truth, her father left, and even though her mom tried to protect her by saying he was busy being a star, Billy isn't stupid. She knows abandonment when she sees it. For weeks, Liam struggles. He cancels his tour, much to his manager's fury, and rents a cabin outside town. He visits Josie's flower shop daily. Sometimes Billy is there, sometimes she's not. Slowly, painfully slowly, he learns about his daughter. Her favorite color purple, her favorite food macaroni and cheese, her favorite book fairy tales, especially The Little Prince. But it's not until one evening at David's house that the breakthrough happens. Liam is visiting his father, helping restore the rose garden his late mother loved. David pulls out an old guitar, the one Liam learned on as a kid. Liam starts playing Wildflowers, the song his mother used to sing. Billy, who's visiting with Josie, stops and listens. When the song ends, she whispers, "That was beautiful." "Thanks." Mom hums that song sometimes when she's sad. Liam's throat tightens. "Does she Billy nods on "Can you teach me to play?" And just like that, the door cracks open. Over the next month, Liam and Billy meet 3 times a week for guitar lessons. Music becomes their language, the one thing they can share without words, and one day, after a particularly good lesson, Billy says, "Liam, yeah, can I call you Dad?" Liam's eyes fill with tears. "I'd really like that." She hugs him. It's the first time she's touched him. While Liam and Billy grow closer, Josie remains guarded. She's glad Billy has a father now, but she's terrified of being hurt again. Connor warns her constantly. He's going to leave, just like before. But Josie sees something different. She sees Liam restoring David's rose garden. She sees him showing up every day, even when Billy ignores him. She sees him trying, really trying. One night, Josie pulls out an old shoebox from under her bed. Inside are photos, letters, and the note Liam left on their wedding day. "I'm sorry, I have to go." She reads it for the first time in years, and she realizes she's still angry, but she's also still in love. When Liam asks her on a date, she says yes. He takes her on a helicopter ride over the mountains. They have dinner on a rooftop in Billings under string lights. They talk, laugh, remember who they used to be, and when Liam says, "I'm never leaving again," Josie wants to believe him. They kiss under the stars, and for the first time in 8 years, Josie allows herself to hope. A week later, the whole family has dinner together: Liam, Josie, Billy, David, and Connor. It's awkward at first, but then Billy plays Wildflowers on her guitar and everyone relaxes. For a moment, they feel like a real family. Then Billy starts choking. A piece of steak lodges in her throat. Her face turns purple. Josie screams. David lunges forward, Connor rushes over, and Liam freezes. He stands there paralyzed as his daughter gasps for air because in his mind he's not in Josie's dining room. He's 10 years old, standing in his childhood kitchen watching his mother collapse from a stroke. The nurse is screaming at him to get help, but his legs won't move. Useless, worthless, broken. David strikes Billy's back. She coughs. The food flies out. She's okay, but Liam isn't. He stumbles outside into the night. Connor follows, furious, while Moda. "What the hell was that? Your daughter almost died." "I couldn't what? Be a father?" Connor grabs Liam's shirt. "I knew you weren't ready. You'll never be ready." Liam doesn't argue, because Connor's right. Inside, Billy cries in Josie's arms. "Where's Dad?" Josie looks out the window, sees Liam getting into his car. "He'll be back," she whispers. But she doesn't believe it. By morning, Liam is gone. Liam flees to Nashville. He rejoins his tour. But he's hollow, empty. He performs like a robot. The spark is gone. Rick, his manager, confronts him. "What happened in Montana? Oh, so I failed again." How? Liam tells him about Billy choking, about freezing, about running. Rick listens. Then he tells Liam a story. 10 years ago, Rick had a son named Lucas. One day at the lake, Lucas went under. Rick pulled him out, but the boy wasn't breathing. Paramedics told Rick to do CPR, and Rick froze. A stranger saved Lucas. But Rick stood there useless. A year later, Lucas died in a car accident, and Rick spent the rest of his life regretting that he froze. "You didn't freeze because you're weak," Rick says. "You froze because you love them so much that the thought of losing them terrified you, but running from that fear means you've already lost." Those words break something open in Liam. He realizes fear isn't the problem. Running from fear is. So he makes a decision. He's going home. Liam flies back to Montana at dawn. He drives straight to Josie's house, kneels on her doorstep, places the old Nokia phone, the one with her voicemail, in front of the door, and presses play. Her voice from 8 years ago echoes in the quiet morning. Liam, I'm pregnant. I'm scared. Please call me back. I love you. I'll always love you. The door opens. Josie stands there, eyes red from crying. I'm sorry I never called back, Liam says, voice breaking. I'm sorry I left, but I'm here now, and I'm never running again. Behind her, Billy appears. Dad. Hey, sweetheart. You came back. I did. Billy runs to him, hugs him tight. Josie watches, torn between anger and hope. Connor pulls up in his patrol car. He steps out, looks at the scene, and sighs. If you hurt them again, I won't. Connor nods. Good. Liam doesn't move back in immediately. He stays with David, but he's there every day. He starts therapy for his PTSD. He learns that the trauma from his mother's death has been controlling him for years. He apologizes to Josie, to Billy, to David, to Connor. Slowly, so slowly, they begin to heal. 6 months later, Liam releases an album called Coming Home. The title track is about his journey. At his concert in Bozeman, he invites Billy on stage. They play Wildflowers together. The crowd goes wild. After the show, Liam proposes to Josie. She says yes. 1 year later, Liam and Josie get married, in the same church where she once stood alone. This time, Liam shows up. Billy is the flower girl. Connor walks Josie down the aisle. David cries, and when Liam says his vows, he promises, I will never run again. That night, the family sits in David's rose garden, fully restored, blooming with life. Billy plays guitar, David hums along, Connor drinks a beer, and Josie rests her head on Liam's shoulder. You made it home, she whispers. I was always looking for home in the wrong places, Liam says. Turns out it was here all along. Coming Home is a story about redemption, about second chances, about the courage it takes to face our deepest fears. Liam's journey reminds us that running from our mistakes doesn't make them disappear. It only makes them grow. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stop running, turn around, and face the people we've hurt. It's also a story about forgiveness, not just from others, but from ourselves. Josie had every right to hate Liam, but she chose love instead. Not because he deserved it, but because love is a choice, not a reward, and Billy taught us that children are far wiser than we give them credit for. She didn't forgive her father immediately, she made him earn it. But when she saw that he was really trying, she opened her heart. Above all, Coming Home reminds us that some wounds never fully heal. The scars remain. But those scars don't have to define us. They can be proof that we survived, that we loved, that we tried, and sometimes that's enough. Thank you for listening, dear friends. I hope this story touched your heart the way it touched mine. Until next time, keep believing in second chances, keep choosing love, and remember, it's never too late to come home.
Mila had been working at the Royal Crest Hotel long enough to know that silence was safer than curiosity. The guests who came in at midnight and left before dawn weren't the kind who wanted to be noticed. She cleaned, she smiled politely, and she kept her head down. That was how she survived. The marble floors of the VIP wing gleamed under her careful polishing, reflecting the chandelier lights like a still pond. Her knees ached from kneeling, and her hands smelled perpetually of lemon cleaner no matter how many times she washed them. But the pay was better than any other cleaning job in the city, and the guests tipped well when they bothered to notice her at all. Most didn't. She preferred it that way. That night was different. She had just finished polishing the marble floors outside the VIP suite when she heard familiar voices drifting through the half-closed door. The woman's tone was sharp, urgent, not the usual languid drawl Mila had heard from the woman who occasionally swept through the hotel lobby in designer heels and dark sunglasses. He won't live past tonight. Once he gets in the car, it's done, the woman said. Mila's cloth stopped mid-swipe. Her breath caught in her throat. She told herself to move, to push her cart away, to pretend she'd heard nothing. But her body had frozen, crouched there on the floor like a rabbit that had just spotted a wolf. It was the voice of Bianca Tavani, the wife of the feared mafia boss, Gabriel Tavani. Mila had seen her photo in the newspapers, always perfectly composed beside her husband at charity galas. The next voice sent a cold shiver down Mila's spine. You'll finally be free, Bianca, the man replied, his voice smooth as silk and twice as suffocating. Once your husband's gone, everything he built is ours. It was Gabriel's brother. Mila had seen him too once when he dropped off a briefcase in the lobby. He had the same sharp jawline as Gabriel but without the weight of command in his eyes. Just hunger. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here and supporting this channel. Before we dive deep into today's story about a janitor who risks everything to save a dangerous man's life, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next thrilling tale. Your support means the world to me. Now let's get back in. Mila's heart hammered so hard she feared they'd hear it echoing off the pristine marble. A bead of sweat rolled down her temple. Her fingers, still clutching the cleaning rag, had gone numb. She backed away quietly, her worn sneakers squeaking traitorously against the floor. She winced, but the voices inside continued without pause. Her mind screamed at her to forget what she'd heard, to go home to her tiny studio apartment and pretend this night had never happened. But another thought cut through her panic like a knife through butter. Gabriel Tavani was going to die tonight, and she was the only person who knew. Without thinking twice, she ran to the janitor's room, nearly tripping over her own cart in her haste. The small space smelled of bleach and old coffee. Her hands trembled as she lifted her old retro telephone handset, the kind her father used to call a survivor's phone, because it had outlived 3 apartments and 2 breakups. She scrolled through the employee contact sheet she had once seen when the boss's men used the hotel office during some kind of emergency. She found his private number hidden between coded initials that meant nothing to most people but everything to those who knew. Her finger hovered over the call button. What was she doing? People who interfered in mafia business didn't just get fired. They disappeared. But if she did nothing and he died, could she live with that? She pressed call. When the line connected, she whispered, her voice barely audible even to herself. Mr. Tavani, please don't hang up. You don't know me, but your wife, she's not who you think she is. She and your brother, they're planning to kill you tonight. There was silence on the other end, so complete she wondered if the call had dropped. Then a deep, calm voice said, "Who is this?" His voice was everything the newspaper said it would be: controlled, dangerous, the kind of voice that could order someone's death without raising in volume. "I'm a janitor at Royal Crest. I shouldn't be calling, but I heard them. Please, leave wherever you are. They said your car will explode." She heard him inhale sharply, a small human sound that made him suddenly real rather than just a name in the news. He didn't speak again, but she could hear movement on his end, urgent footsteps, a door slamming. Then the line went dead. Mila stood there clutching the phone, her whole body shaking now. What had she done? She replaced the handset carefully, as if sudden movement might shatter what remained of her composure. Minutes later, the hotel security screens flickered as black cars screeched out of the garage, tires screaming against concrete. Mila stood frozen in the janitor's closet, praying she hadn't just signed her own death sentence. She pressed her back against the wall, feeling the cold metal shelving through her thin uniform, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. At dawn, the news spread like wildfire. Gabriel Tavani survived an assassination attempt. His convoy had been ambushed, but he had changed routes moments before the blast. The explosion had been massive, taking out an entire city block. If he'd been in that car. Mila tried to act normal, scrubbing floors as if her heart wasn't racing, as if she hadn't just altered the course of a mafia war. Her supervisor commented that she looked pale. She blamed it on a stomach bug and kept her head down, pushing her cart from room to room with mechanical precision. But that evening she returned to the same suite for cleaning, and once again she heard whispers. Bianca and Gabriel's brother had come back, bold or stupid or both. "He should have been dead," Bianca hissed, her elegant voice twisted with rage. Someone warned him. Find out who. Mila's blood turned to ice water in her veins. Her throat went dry. She stood perfectly still outside the door, not even daring to breathe, her fingers white-knuckled around the handle of her mop. She tried to slip away, but her cart's wheel caught on the thick carpet with a soft thump. Inside the room, conversation stopped. A glass crashed to the floor inside. The door opened before she could move, spilling golden light into the hallway. Bianca's cold eyes met hers, and recognition flashed across the woman's beautiful face like lightning. "So it's you." The word was barely a whisper, but it hit Mila hard. Mila turned and ran, her shoes slipping on the marble she'd polished so carefully just hours before. The irony would have been funny if she weren't running for her life. She didn't make it to the elevator. A hand clamped over her mouth from behind, cutting off her scream. She struggled, but another set of hands grabbed her arms. She tried to bite, to kick, but they were too strong. The last thing she saw was the elevator doors sliding shut on an empty car. Then everything went black. When Gabriel called the hotel that night to find the mysterious woman who'd saved his life, no one could locate her. The manager stammered excuses, shuffling through employee files with increasing panic. The janitor's closet was empty. Her time card showed she'd clocked in but never clocked out. Her name tag lay on the floor, bent and bloodstained. Rage unlike anything he'd ever known erupted in Gabriel, hot and consuming. His men stepped back instinctively. They'd seen their boss angry before, but this was different. This was personal. "Find her," he ordered, his voice deadly quiet. "Now." It took hours before one of his soldiers reported a black sedan speeding toward the coast. The same car his wife used, the one registered under a shell company he'd thought was for shopping trips and spa days. They found it abandoned at an old boathouse, the kind of place that smelled of rotting wood and salt water, where fishermen used to store their equipment before the Tavani family bought up the coastline. The door hung open, creaking in the wind. Mila was tied to a chair in the center of the dusty space, her face pale but defiant. Blood had dried at the corner of her mouth, and her uniform was torn at the shoulder. But her eyes, those dark, determined eyes, were still blazing with life. Bianca stood behind her with a gun, perfectly manicured nails wrapped around the grip. Gabriel's brother loaded a suitcase full of money near the back door, already planning his escape. "Gabriel," Bianca said sweetly when he stepped through the door, his men fanning out behind him. "You should have died with your empire." She looked beautiful even now, he realized with detached clarity. Beautiful and monstrous. He didn't reply. His eyes were fixed on Mila, taking in every bruise, every sign of fear she was trying so hard to hide. She'd saved his life and they'd hurt her for it. "Let her go," he said quietly. Bianca laughed, the sound high and brittle. "She warned you, didn't she? This little maid ruined everything. Do you know how long we planned this?" "Months, Gabriel. Months of playing the devoted wife while you swaggered around like you were untouchable." "Let her go," he repeated, taking a step forward. "This is between us." "No," Bianca said, pressing the gun against Mila's temple. Mila flinched but didn't cry out. "This is about her too now. She made herself part of this when she picked up that phone." Gabriel's brother had stopped packing, his hand sliding toward his own weapon. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Gabriel's men burst in before she could pull the trigger. Shots echoed through the boathouse, deafening in the enclosed space. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. When it was over, Bianca and his brother were gone, vanishing through a back exit Gabriel hadn't even known existed, disappearing into the night like smoke. Gabriel untied Mila with shaking hands, actually shaking, which surprised him more than the betrayal, more than the attempt on his life. He, who had ordered executions without a tremor, couldn't keep his fingers steady as he worked at the rough rope binding her wrists. "You're safe now," he whispered, brushing a cut on her cheek with unexpected gentleness. His thumb came away red. "You shouldn't have risked yourself for me." She met his gaze, tears glistening in her eyes but refusing to fall. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "I couldn't let them kill you. Not when I could stop it." For the first time in years, the mafia boss felt something he couldn't control. Gratitude mixed with a dangerous tenderness that spread through his chest like warmth after frostbite. Weeks passed. Mila recovered at his villa, though she insisted it was only temporary, that she'd find another job, another apartment, get back to her normal life. But Gabriel couldn't stay away from her. He found excuses to check on her recovery, bringing her tea he'd made himself, badly, asking about her comfort, ensuring the guest room had everything she needed. The sound of her laugh when she discovered he couldn't operate the television remote, the way she refused to look afraid of him even when his men reported in about executions and territory disputes, the way she called him sir even when her voice shook with exhaustion or pain. It became his quiet obsession. He gave her a new job, this time as his personal housekeeper, but it was only an excuse to keep her close. Every time he saw her, he remembered that she had saved his life when no one else dared, when his own wife and brother had wanted him dead. "You don't have to keep me here," she told him one morning, watching him read the newspaper over breakfast. She was setting down his coffee and their fingers brushed. Neither moved away immediately. "Yeah, I know," he said. "Then why are you keeping me here?" He looked at her, really looked at her. "Because I want to." She bit her lip, a gesture he'd noticed she made when she was thinking too hard. "People will talk. Let them talk." She smiled despite herself. You're used to getting what you want, aren't you? Usually, he admitted. But not like this. What's different? She asked, sitting down across from him, something that would have been unthinkable with anyone else in his organization. You are different, he said simply. You risked everything for a man you barely knew, he said one night when they sat on his terrace. The city lights spread below them like fallen stars. She'd been living at the villa for 3 weeks now, and the bruises had faded to yellow shadows on her skin. Maybe I saw something worth saving, she replied softly, pulling her cardigan tighter against the evening breeze. He smiled, a rare, genuine smile that transformed his face from intimidating to almost boyish. And what did you see? She considered this carefully. Someone who's tired, she said finally. Someone who does terrible things because he thinks he has to, not because he wants to. You make me sound better than I am. Maybe I see you better than you see yourself. He reached across the small table between them and took her hand. She let him, her palm warm against his scarred knuckles. But far away, in a dimly lit hideout across the border, Bianca and Gabriel's brother watched the news on a grainy television. The reporter discussed Gabriel Tavani's latest legitimate business acquisition, his charity donation, his survival against all odds. The camera caught him briefly exiting a restaurant, and there, just visible in the background, was Mila, her hand in his. Bianca crushed her glass of wine, red liquid seeping through her fingers like blood. Let him enjoy his little janitor for now, she whispered, her voice venomous. When we return, she'll wish she never made that call. Gabriel's brother leaned back, already planning. She's his weakness now. Exactly, Bianca smiled, sharp and cruel. And weaknesses are meant to be exploited. Back at the villa, Gabriel pulled Mila closer on the terrace, unaware of the threat reforming in the shadows. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling safer than she had in her entire life, even as danger circled like sharks in dark water. The janitor had saved his life. Now she'd become the only thing he couldn't afford to lose. And in the criminal underworld, Gabriel commanded, anything you couldn't afford to lose was a liability waiting to be exploited. But as he pressed a kiss to the top of her head and felt her smile against his chest, he decided some liabilities were worth the risk. Even if it cost him everything. And that's where we'll leave Mila and Gabriel for now, safe in each other's arms, but with danger lurking just around the corner. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this incredible community. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think will happen next. Will Bianca and Gabriel's brother return? Can their love survive the coming storm? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, take care and see you in the next story.
The figure stumbled through the snow like a ghost made flesh, wrapped in threadbare cloth that whipped against the howling wind. From his cabin window, Jake Morrison watched the stranger collapse 20 yards from his door, a dark smudge against the endless white that stretched across the Wyoming territory. He'd seen plenty of folks die in blizzards like this. Most men would have stayed by their fire, said a prayer, and waited for spring to reveal another frozen corpse. But something about the way this one moved, small, deliberate, fighting every step, made Jake pull on his coat. The wind cut through him like a blade as he trudged toward the fallen figure. Snow had already begun to bury the stranger, and Jake could see death settling in, patient and cold. He knelt beside the motionless form, noting the delicate hands, the slight frame beneath the tattered wrappings. "You'll freeze out here," he muttered, more to himself than to whoever lay unconscious in the drift. Jake scooped the stranger into his arms, lighter than he'd expected, and carried them back toward the amber glow of his cabin. Inside, he laid the figure on his bed and began stoking the fire, adding log after log until the flames roared and heat filled the small space. Only then did he turn back to his unexpected guest. The stranger's breathing was shallow, lips blue with cold. Frost clung to the cloth wrapped around their head and face, and Jake knew that without warming, this person would die within the hour. He'd seen hypothermia before. It took folks quiet and gentle, like falling asleep. His hands hesitated at the edge of the cloth. In this territory, you didn't go unwrapping strangers without cause. But cause enough was lying half dead in his bed, and modesty wouldn't save a frozen soul. Jake pulled away the outer layer of tattered fabric, Then the next, his weathered fingers working carefully around a face he couldn't yet see. The cloth was frozen in places, and he had to wait for it to thaw before continuing. Steam rose from the wet fabric as the heat reached it. One more layer. His hands moved to the final wrapping around the stranger's head. The cloth fell away. Jake's breath caught in his throat. His hands froze mid-motion, and for a long moment the only sound was the crackling fire and the wind battering his cabin walls. The face looking back at him, unconscious but unmistakable, belonged to someone he'd thought was dead for 15 years, Catherine Henley. Jake stumbled backward from the bed, his mind reeling. The last time he'd seen that face, it was streaked with tears and blood, framed by flames that consumed half of Willowbrook. She'd been 19 then. The banker's daughter promised to marry Jake's brother Thomas before the raids came, before everything burned, before Jake had left her for dead. Now she lay in his bed, 15 years older but unmistakable, the same dark hair, the same fine-boned features that had haunted his dreams. Only now her face was hollow with hunger, marked by years of hardship that had carved away the softness he remembered. Jake's hands shook as he poured whiskey from his bottle, downing it in one burning gulp. The smart thing, the safe thing would be to wrap her back up, carry her outside, and let the blizzard finish what it started. Catherine Henley was supposed to be dead. If she was alive, if she'd survived, she knew what really happened that night in Willowbrook. He looked at her again, noting the scars on her hands, the way her clothes hung loose on her frame. This wasn't the pampered banker's daughter who'd worn silk dresses and pearl buttons. This was someone who'd learned to survive, someone who'd been running for a very long time. Jake knelt beside the bed and felt for her pulse, weak but steady. Her skin was warming, color returning to her cheeks. She'd live, if he let her. The wind rattled his windows, and Jake thought about the life he'd built here. 3 years of peace, 3 years of folks in Copper Falls calling him a decent man, trading with him, trusting him. All of it built on the lie that Jake Morrison was just another drifter who'd settled down, not the man who'd burned Willowbrook to ash. Catherine stirred slightly, her lips parting. In her delirium, she whispered a single word, Thomas. Jake's brother's name hit him like a physical blow. Thomas, who'd died in the flames. Thomas, who'd never known that Jake had set them. Footsteps crunched through the snow outside, slow and deliberate. Jake moved to the window and peered through the frost-covered glass. 3 riders sat their horses in the storm, wrapped in heavy coats, watching his cabin. Even through the snow, he could see the glint of badges on their chests. The law had followed Catherine Henley to his door. Sheriff Bill Crenshaw's voice carried through the storm like thunder. Morrison, we know you got someone in there. Jake pressed himself against the wall beside his window, mind racing. Crenshaw was persistent as a hunting dog and twice as mean. If he'd tracked Catherine here, it meant someone had seen her collapse, seen Jake carry her inside. In a territory where survival depended on neighbors helping neighbors, refusing to answer would mark him as guilty of something. Morrison, Crenshaw called again. We're looking for a woman. Dangerous fugitive. Goes by Catherine Henley though she's used other names. Catherine's eyes fluttered open at the sound of her name. For a moment she stared at the cabin ceiling in confusion, then her gaze found Jake's face. Recognition hit her like lightning. Her eyes widened, her body tensed, and she tried to sit up. Easy, Jake whispered, pressing a hand to her shoulder. You're hurt bad. You, she breathed, her voice barely audible. Jake Morrison, you're supposed to be dead. Makes 2 of us. The sheriff's voice came closer. She murdered a federal judge in Colorado. Morrison shot him dead in his own courtroom. There's a $1,000 bounty on her head. Jake studied Catherine's face, looking for the killer Crenshaw described. All he saw was exhaustion and pain, and something else, something that looked like relief. Did you? He asked quietly. Catherine's laugh was bitter as winter wind. Judge Harrison, yes, I killed him. Her eyes never left Jake's face. He was the one who paid you to burn Willowbrook, paid you to make sure there were no witnesses to what his mining company did to that town. The words hit Jake like bullets. She knew. After 15 years she still knew. Your Honor, Crenshaw shouted, his patience wearing thin. "Open this door, or we'll break it down. You got 30 seconds. Catherine struggled to sit up, her hand clutching Jake's wrist with surprising strength. "They'll hang me," she said, "but not before they make me tell them everything I know about Willowbrook, about who really started those fires." Through the window, Jake could see Crenshaw's men dismounting, hands on their guns. 20 seconds, maybe less. "I have proof," Catherine whispered urgently. "Letters, payment records, everything that shows Judge Harrison hired you and 6 other men to burn out those families so his company could claim the land. I've been carrying it for 15 years, waiting for the right moment." 10 seconds. Jake looked at the door, then at Catherine, then at the gun hanging on his wall. 3 choices: let them take her and hope she kept quiet, fight 3 armed lawmen, and probably die, or Crenshaw's boot hit the door. "I'm coming," Jake called out, buying himself precious seconds. He moved to Catherine, helping her sit up fully. "Where's this proof?" She pointed to her coat, crumpled on the floor, sewn into the lining. "Everything's there, the contracts, the payment vouchers, even a letter from Harrison to his mining partners bragging about how clean the job was." Jake retrieved the coat, feeling the crinkle of hidden papers. "Why didn't you use this before? Why run for 15 years? Catherine's eyes filled with tears she was too tired to shed. "Because I was a coward. Because Harrison was a federal judge, and I was nobody. Because," her voice broke, "because I blamed you for Thomas's death, and I wanted you to suffer like I did." The door rattled under another impact. "But I saw Harrison's records," she continued. "The payments went out after Thomas died. You didn't know he was still in that building when you lit it, did you?" Jake's world tilted. "What? Thomas went back for something. A locket I'd given him. Harrison's men told him everyone was out, told him he had time." Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. "You thought the building was empty. They made sure you thought that." 15 years of guilt crashed down on Jake like an avalanche. 15 years of believing he'd murdered his own brother for money. His legs gave out, and he sank to his knees beside the bed. "I burned down that town," he said hoarsely. "I killed 37 people." "You burned empty buildings for what you thought was insurance money," Catherine corrected. "Harrison's men made sure those buildings weren't empty. They wanted witnesses dead, wanted families destroyed so no one could challenge the mining claims later." Another crash against the door, this time wood splintered. Catherine reached out and touched Jake's face with her scarred hand. "I spent years hating you, but I was hating the wrong man, Morrison." Crenshaw's voice was right outside now. "Last chance." Jake looked at Catherine, really looked at her. The soft girl he'd known was gone, replaced by someone who'd survived 15 years of running, 15 years of carrying the truth about Willowbrook. Someone who'd finally found the courage to face her demons. Someone who'd come back to save him from his. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Catherine smiled for the first time since he'd found her, and for a moment, Jake saw an echo of the girl she'd been. "I want to finish what I started, but I can't do it alone." The door burst open, and Sheriff Crenshaw stepped inside with his gun drawn. "Well, well," Crenshaw said, his eyes moving from Jake to Catherine. "Jake Morrison and the famous Catherine Henley. This is my lucky day." Jake stood slowly, positioning himself between the sheriff and Catherine. "She's hurt, Crenshaw. Needs a doctor. She needs a rope," Crenshaw replied. "But first she's going to tell me real nice about some other folks who might have been involved in her little crusade against Judge Harrison." That's when Jake understood. Crenshaw wasn't here for justice, he was here to clean up loose ends. Harrison might be dead, but his mining empire was still worth protecting. "You're working for them," Jake said. "The mining company." Crenshaw's smile was cold as the storm outside. "Harrison's death left some folks nervous. Can't have ladies like Miss Henley running around with wild stories about Willowbrook." Catherine's hand found the papers hidden in her coat lining. "Stories? Is that what you call documented proof of mass murder?" "I call it the ravings of a desperate woman," Crenshaw said. "Won't matter much once you're both dead. Tragic tale, fugitive kills innocent rancher, dies in the shootout with brave lawman." Jake's hand moved toward his gun, but Crenshaw was faster. The sheriff's Colt cleared leather and aimed steady at Jake's chest. "Real slow now," Crenshaw warned. That's when Catherine spoke, her voice carrying the strength of someone who'd found her purpose. "Sheriff, before you pull that trigger, you might want to know about the copies." Crenshaw's eyes narrowed. "What copies? Did you really think I'd carry the only evidence for 15 years without making copies?" Catherine laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "There's a set with the territorial governor, another with the federal marshal in Denver, and a third with the editor of the Rocky Mountain News." Jake watched Crenshaw's face change as the implications sank in. "All sealed with instructions to be opened if anything happens to me." Catherine continued, "You kill me, and by tomorrow morning, every newspaper from here to Washington will be printing the real story of Willowbrook." Crenshaw's gun wavered. "You're bluffing." Catherine pulled the papers from her coat and held them up. "Want to bet your employer's empire on it?" For a long moment the only sound was wind howling around the cabin. Then Crenshaw slowly lowered his gun. "Get out," Jake said quietly, "all of you, and tell whoever sent you that Catherine Henley isn't running anymore." After the lawman rode away, Jake and Catherine sat by the fire watching the flames dance. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we go to Denver, we testify, we make sure Harrison's whole network burns down." Catherine looked at him. "Together." Jake nodded. "Together." Years later, when Catherine Henley Morrison stood on the porch of their ranch outside Denver, watching their children play in the yard, she would remember that night in the cabin. She would remember how sometimes salvation comes disguised as damnation, how sometimes the person you think is your enemy turns out to be the only one who can help you find your way home. And sometimes when the wind was just right, she could swear she heard her brother-in-law Thomas laughing in approval from wherever good souls go to rest. The truth had set them both free.